Well, going with the wind, there's a new study dealing a blow to all of these wind turbines the taxpayers are backing. And this one has nothing to do with the birds they're killing. Instead, it shows wind farms are fueling higher temperatures on the ground. Imagine that. Marc Morano, not at all surprised by these developments. What is this? What's really going on here, Marc? These things are poster children, we're told, for addressing global warming. Now they're contributing to it?
Yes, this is a study just published in Nature Climate Change, the journal, and by University of New York scientists. 1.3 degrees Fahrenheit increase in temperatures on the ground around all these windmills. The study centered in in Texas, and what they're finding is the more windmills, the greater the warming all around these areas. And this raises a whole specter of questions. We've already known that windmills, as you mentioned, are killing birds. Any estimates from 400,000 birds a year to almost 1 million. And by the way, Gulf oil companies get fined for killing 28 birds and face massive penalties. Wind companies get exemptions from killing birds. But what
By the
they're
way,
finding,
the birds get killed just flying into these? Is that what happened?
Yes, they're called bird blenders, absolutely.
Wow.
And they try to do all sorts of things to mitigate it, but that's just it's one of the sad facts of wind energy. But in terms of temperature, what happens is these turbines are pulling down the warmer air above and mixing in all the cooler air. At night, generally cooler air settles on the ground, and these wind turbines are pulling in all this warm air. So they're having a marked increase in warmth all around it, which raises questions. Are they going to start checking where a lot of ground-based thermometers are? Have they been impacted now by what people are calling the wind island effect, the wind heat island effect, around these turbines? So this is just another thing. People thought green energy was so simple. It's turning out to be much more complicated.
I can remember the late Senator Edward Kennedy was not a fan of these wind farms within eyesight of his compound, and I related to that, even though he was for wind power. The difference, I guess, between the late fine senator and myself is I always thought these things were god-awful to begin with. For one thing, they're ugly. But if they did the job and they generated enough energy, then you could live with that. But they don't even do that. So I guess the question going forward is, what do we do with these things going forward?
Well, unfortunately, it's a government policy to subsidize energy that doesn't work. Worldwide, if you go for a whole number, 0% of energy is coming from wind. It's still less than 0.5% if you round. If you look at wind power, in the UK, they're finding in the winter it costs more or used more energy to heat the turbines than they produced energy. More energy used to heat them because they froze up during the cold winter. We are finding that 100 times the subsidy goes to solar and wind power per unit of energy as it does to oil and gas. Oil and gas produce massive amounts of energy. Wind and solar don't. Wind power was around since the 13th century. People say, let's let it compete with carbon-based energy, oil, gas. It did compete. Wind and solar have competed, and they had their rear ends kicked. And yet people still keep resurrecting these technologies. I'm not saying they should be destroyed or stopped, but the idea that we can subsidize and mandate them as a way to get us out of some global warming apocalypse, which isn't happening. And by the way, one of the chief proponents of global warming, James Lovelock, has now recanted his alarmism, says he was wrong, and he's the same man now who is saying that Europe's reliance on wind power will be one of the greatest follies of the 21st century, reliance on wind power to replace baseload electricity. So even the big green gurus are reconsidering wind and reconsidering the reason we have these wind mandates, which is fear of man-made global warming.
So it turns out all along it was a lot of hot air. Marc, thank you very, very much. Do you want to see some jobs soar?